I live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, on the north edge where cul-de-sacs give up and soybean fields start pretending to be prairie again. From my porch, I can hear County V in the morning. Diesels downshifting, studs ticking like a metronome. I'm 40, divorced, a school bus driver for District 12. My son, Mason, is 11. On my weeks he asks to ride last so he can sit up front after his stop and help me dock the ship. He says the bus smells like pencils and winter. He's right. People think bus driving is a steering wheel the size of a pizza and songs about wheels going round. Mostly it's rituals. Pre-trip in the dark with a flashlight, tapping tires with a thumper, running fingers over lug nuts to feel the one that's thinking about leaving, counting seats, counting kids, counting breaths. You learn the temperature of yellow paint through gloves. You learn that black ice looks exactly like confidence. The day that changed my life started with a sky trying to remember what blue is. Forecast said 1 to 3 inches by noon, northwest wind, temps pretending not to be cruel. Dispatch crackled at 5:20. Schools open, buses rolling. I signed the checklist, turned the mirrors so I could see the faces I'd be responsible for, and patted the first aid kit like a superstition. I told myself the sentence I say every morning. I will bring them home tired from learning, not hurt. By the third stop, Snow had stopped flirting and started being honest. It fell at that stubborn angle that makes wipers argue. The kids came aboard with their breath-making little ghosts, boots crusted white, laughter that lives in coats. "Morning, crew," I said into the clip mic, and they answered, "Morning, Mr. Tyler." The way a bus turned strangers into a team by the second week of September. On County V, the plows hadn't loved us yet. Past Sand Creek, the road narrowed to the memory of 2 lanes. I eased off the throttle and let weight do its clean, boring job. A 7th grader named Jonah kept a running commentary about the basketball game and the rumor that vending machines had upgraded their pretzels. His sister, Kaylee, rolled her eyes with the expertise of a kid who's been practicing since birth. In the convex mirror, I watched a kindergartner hold up her hamster, Mr. Nibbles, in a plastic carrier with air holes that looked like freckles. She kept it against her chest like a secret she trusted me with. Mile marker 6 is where the tree line breaks and the wind gets teeth. There's a shallow S-curve with a ditch that thinks it's a ravine. We hit it doing 22. I remember because my eyes lived on that gauge whenever the road argued. The back end whispered first, the way trouble clears its throat. I eased off more, feathered the service brake like I was convincing a skittish horse. The bus fishtailed, corrected, fishtailed again. Somebody said, "Whoa," and then laughed because it felt like a ride until it didn't. The third slide had religion in it. The nose wanted the ditch. I steered into the slide. The world tipped. Backpacks did their impression of birds. A window popped with the sound of a knuckle cracking. When we stopped, the aisle was a wall and the wall was a floor. For a second, no one made a sound, and then everyone did. Kids cried. Someone laughed the way scared people laugh. I said the sentence I didn't feel yet. "We're okay." What I meant was, we are not done. Training showed up like muscle memory when my mind tried to leave town. I killed the engine, flipped hazards and fuel shutoff, grabbed the radio. The antenna had kissed a snowbank and gone sulky. "Bus 12 to dispatch," I said, making my voice the metronome. "Rollover at County V near mile 6. Occupants conscious. Request EMS and law." "Copy," dispatch said. "Too calm and exactly right. 12. Confirm no fire." "Negative fire," I said, swallowing against the taste of pennies. "Ditch is deep. Rear exit accessible." Then I turned to 23 small faces, saw my whole job looking back at me and said, "Okay, team," toward my voice, because the bus was on its side. The rear emergency door was a hatch into snow. It stuck the way doors do when they're arguing with weather. I leaned into it with both legs, felt the seal give, and a rectangle of white rushed the aisle. "Older kids first, not to leave, so you can turn around and help," I said. Jonah braced himself on a seat frame. Kaylee started a head count out loud, and little hands began passing backpacks like a bucket brigade of bright nylon. A 3rd grader held up Mr. Nibbles and asked if emergency rules applied to hamsters. "He's the bravest one here," I said. and tucked the carrier into my coat like a heartbeat. A boy named Ethan clutched his forearm and made the tight sound pain makes when it's deciding whether to roar. "Can you wiggle your fingers?" He could, but the bone under the skin had a bend nature didn't intend. I slid a Sam splint and wrap out of the kit, talked while I worked. This will feel weird, not bad, and watched older kids make space without being told. That quiet competence children keep hidden until adults leave a gap for it. Snow had drifted into the ditch in a way that made a ramp. I boosted kids to the lip, handed them off to Jonah and Kaylee, and lined them up away from the road like chess pieces I intended to keep. The wind taxed us for heat. A neighbor I knew only as the guy with the black lab appeared from the farmhouse at the bend carrying blankets that smelled like hay and an opinion. "Name's Rick," he said, already draping shoulders. "Kitchen's warm. Wife's got cocoa." We counted heads twice and then once more because counting is a spell. 23 kids, 1 hamster. The first squad car slid in like a hockey player finding his edge. The deputy took one look and said, "You kept them off the road? Bless you." EMS arrived with competence that tasted like metal and relief. They splinted Ethan right, wrapped 2 heads I hadn't noticed were bleeding, checked pupils, checked pulses, and made the world small enough to manage. We moved the littles into Rick's kitchen, where a line of boots steamed on a mat and cocoa turned panic into sugar. While the ambulance loaded Ethan, a state trooper asked me to walk the scene. He kept saying, "Not your fault." The sentence you repeat when the man beside you has already built a gallows and is looking for lumber. "Speed?" he asked. 22, I said, because the needle lives in my head. "Tires. New this season. Salt. Behind." He nodded. "They're always behind for somebody." Under the bus, the earth showed scars where weight had argued with mud. The curve looked innocent from this angle, like a smirk erased. The trooper said words like, "Black ice and blowing snow, an act of God." And I said a word back I won't print here. He didn't ticket me. He didn't have to. I had already written my own. Back in the kitchen, kids were quiet in that post-adventure way. Rick's wife set mugs down with both hands like a sacrament. Mr. Nibbles accepted a cornflake and forgave us. A girl who had been brave in the ditch let herself cry into a sleeve that smelled like laundry soap. I stood in the doorway, radio clipped to my shoulder, and let the relief arrive slowly, the way thaw climbs a ditch 1 inch at a time. I went home later with cocoa on my breath and wrote every kid's name by the coffee maker. Names, I decided, are your first equipment. The district put me on leave while insurance and lawyers did their slow dance. They called it standard. It felt like being benched for a game I never asked to play. I sat at the kitchen table with the incident report and printed in block letters because lowercase looked like forgiveness I hadn't earned. When I reached the line, "Vehicle rolled onto passenger side," my hand cramped. I pressed a bag of frozen peas to my palm and watched the microwave clock blink its green reminder that time moves whether you do or not. Ethan's mom texted a photo from the hospital. His forearm wrapped, signatures stacked like skyscrapers. Across the cast someone had written, "Mr. Tyler saved us." Letters climbing uphill as if gravity had decided to be kind. I stared until the words blurred and then steadied. She thanked me for keeping him calm. For the splint the ER nurse complimented. For saying, "We're okay," when the room still argued. An hour later, a different father left a voicemail that began with, "My daughter hit her head," and slid into, "Why were you even out there?" I played it 4 times like an idiot hoping the ending would change, then saved it because guilt likes souvenirs. Sleep became busy. The slide arrived when the furnace clicked. The aisle turned into a wall across the inside of my eyelids. My hands reached for a wheel that wasn't there. Mason finally asked the question kids imagine is forbidden. "Did you mess up?" I poured the truth into a small glass. "Maybe. I did my best. I'll do better." He nodded, acceptance you don't get from boards or men in ties. The next day, he drew the bus on its side with everyone smiling and taped it to the fridge. It was a lie that helped. 2 weeks later, the district sat me in a room that smelled like coffee and reasons. The transportation director, who taught me to thump tires with monk-level patience, sat next to a man from risk management whose tie had winter stripes. They walked through the route mile by mile, asked about the 520 decision, the plows, the wind. The instant the back end whispered, The risk man asked if I'd considered stopping. On County V, there's no shoulder, I said. Stopping turns us into a target. The safest place for children in a storm is a bus moving like it knows what it's doing. He wrote something down that I hope was not sarcasm. They cleared me. No termination, no citation. Just a mark only my bones could read. They asked me to take the winter refresher. I said I'd teach it if they'd let me. If you survive a thing, you owe a cheaper lesson to the next person. We turned the shop into a classroom. I showed rookies the curve on a map and then drove them there in a van. Feel how the wind grows teeth at the break in the trees, I said. You'll feel it in your shoulder before you feel it in the wheel. We added to every bus kit. Chemical hand warmers, a deck of cards, a Sharpie to write time on a bandage, extra knit caps, and a Ziploc for hamsters. We practiced head counts until eyes rolled. Then practiced again because eyes rolling isn't the same as ready. I took Rick's blankets back and he refused. Keep 'em, he said. You'll need them before I do. He invited me to dinner. I brought Mason because kindness is a currency kids should practice spending. We ate venison stew at a table that had seen things. Their lab, Ruby, leaned her whole head against my knee like a vote. After pie, Rick's wife said, "You kept your head. Plenty don't." I told her I didn't feel brave. Brave is a behavior, not a feeling, she said, and the room got easier to breathe. The first morning I went back en route. My hands trembled on the key. At the first stop, a kindergartner saluted me with a mitten. At the second, Ethan climbed aboard and announced someone had drawn a mustache on his cast labeled Amar. Tyler. He sat and read a comic and every few pages checked to make sure the world was still right side up. At mile 6 I slowed to a crawl, clicked on 4 ways even though the law didn't ask for it, and talked out loud as if training an invisible apprentice. Eyes up, hands light, let the weight work. Breathe. Winter ended like a bad story. Abruptly and with a thud. Potholes opened like arguments. The district held a forum where parents could yell at weather, and some did. Others brought cookies. The superintendent announced better communication protocols, a text system that didn't lag, and a new policy. If wind plus snow plus untreated roads equals too many unknowns, we start late. It sounded like apology shaped into logistics. I started keeping a laminated card in the visor titled What We Carry. It had the usual gauze tape tourniquet, but also the things you only add after you've met a ditch. Chemical warmers, spare socks, cheap blankets, Uno, a Sharpie, a roll of painter's tape for labeling kids who come aboard from other routes, and yes, a bag for hamsters. Above it I taped a sentence. Names are your first equipment. Roll call is triage when your brain is trying to leave the scene. In March, I went to a state training in Madison. A woman from another district stood up and said their driver had a rollover 2 years ago and still hadn't come back. Everyone stared at their coffee. When she sat, I stood because silence feels like abandoning the scene. I told the room how my bus became a wall, how kids became hands, how a farmer named Rick redefined neighbor, how a hamster steadied a morning. I told them the sentence the trooper wrote down and didn't understand. Sometimes the safest thing you can do is keep moving at the speed of your control. Mason and I built a sled hill out of the plow pile behind the depot and named it Mile 6 so we could conquer it repeatedly. It's our joke now, not the ditches. On sunny days, the kids from the late route slid until cheeks went apple red and the depot manager pretended to scold and then took one run himself, awkward in steel toes. Laughter is an inventory too. Spring turned fields into velvet. The curve lost its winter fangs and looked tender as a calf. I didn't trust it. That's okay. Animals can be beautiful and not tame. We planted a sapling with Rick's family by the fence line, a maple that will learn the wind slowly. Kaylee and Jonah came with a trowel and argued about hole depth like pros. We tied a ribbon on the little trunk that will look silly when it's big. I said out loud a thing I hadn't known I was carrying. I was afraid to come back here. Rick said, "Then you're already braver than the fear." One evening in May, after the last run, I parked in Bay 3 and sat without turning the key all the way off. The quiet inside a bus at dusk can be church if you let it. I thought about my father, who drove a snowplow and once told me the trick isn't avoiding every slide. It's learning which direction to aim while you ride it. I thought about the voicemail from the angry dad and how shame is a tool that breaks the user. I thought about Ethan's cast, Mason's drawing, Ruby's weight against my shin, and the way Dispatch's voice stays calm so mine can borrow it. Here is what I know now, and it's not a moral so much as a map. Slow is not cowardice. Counting is a spell. Blankets that smell like hay can be holy. Wind has hands and roads have moods. Every route holds a curve that will test how well you breathe. Laughter rearranges a room's temperature faster than any thermostat. When I ease onto County V and the wind puts its palm against the bus, I say, I feel you. And the bus and I agree to meet in the middle. I am a man in Wisconsin with a yellow bus, a laminated card, and a promise I say out loud before I flip the master switch. I will bring them home tired from learning, not hurt. On the days the road has other plans, I will count names, pour cocoa if there's a kitchen, tuck hamsters in, and keep moving until the ground I choose says yes.